Hey everybody, welcome back to Interpreting the Stars. My name is Dave, and today I have a very special guest joining me to talk about Birdies, which is an independent golf comedy film. Came out last year, and he served producer on it. It is Sam Reed. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So is it Samuel or Sam?
I go by both. It's usually a
Okay.
test to see how well people know me. If they call me Sam, it's like, yeah, you know me pretty well.
All right.
Professionally, I use
Well,
Samuel. So,
perfect.
yeah.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the movie. One thing I always like to ask people is, before you got into the world of movies, what did you do for work, and what changed? What made you want to actually do the thing, get into movies?
That's a great question, actually. So, I actually started this path pretty early on. I was in college at the time and waiting tables and pretty unhappy with my existence at school. And so I actually transferred to go to a film program at University of North Carolina in Wilmington. And that's actually where I met the writer and director of Birdies. But that was 20 years ago also. So after working in Wilmington for a few years, I actually moved to Los Angeles, where I pursued a career in screenwriting, and that ultimately led me into producing. And so, yeah, it's always kind of been the dream and the path. I didn't actually switch careers midstream.
Mm,
But yeah, it's a great question.
awesome. So, yeah, golf comedy. I think the first thing that most people think about when they hear golf comedy is probably Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore. So,
Absolutely.
how would you define what Birdies is all about, first of all, but also how it differs from those movies?
Oh, good question. We definitely wanted to capture a lot of the same sensibility of both of those movies. Kind of a derelict golf course and these crazy characters that kind of like inhabited this course and this world. And so, very much in that Caddyshack kind of vein. And we do definitely see that as like the pinnacle of golf movies. I mean, it's like it is the best. So,
Hmm.
not that we wanted to mimic it or imitate it, but a little bit of an homage of just like, this is a great setup. These are really fun characters. And we felt like if we could bring people into this world, it would be a little bit nostalgic for them. The same way, like going and because you would think of Caddyshack, obviously, you know.
Yeah.
So how does it differ? Probably in a few ways. Number one, the character initially was kind of based on a real person. So the character kind of changed over the time as we developed the film, because the film was in works for like 10 years, actually.
Wow.
It actually started as a pilot to a TV show and then became kind of, they're not really web series, but like little golf snippets where they kind of developed some of the characters a little bit more, and then eventually was written as a feature film. And so we tried to kind of hold true to that character's real life story and kind of what he embodied, because he was a well-known figure in the Wilmington golf community, and his name is Artie, and he taught golf lessons, but he was also a bit of a fun-loving guy and would like to have a lot of, there's a lot of stories floating around in Wilmington about this guy. And so I would say the character that's right over your shoulder, Nick, is probably most based on him, or even or even Ryan. I'm sorry, Jake's character, who is kind of like the lead in the movie. His past is kind of like where we get the glimpse of Artie the most, and kind of this like kind of crazy history of playing golf and sex, drugs, and rock and roll and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, I think the other thing is just that, well, like Caddyshack, we wanted it to be an ensemble piece. We
Right.
wanted to have a lot of different characters that we kind of highlighted to kind of like live in this world. So yeah.
Awesome. But you worked as the producer for this, right?
I did. I mean, there were several producers on this film, but we all wore a lot of different hats.
Right.
Yes, I was definitely a producer on the film. I also was the first AD, and I also ran sound, as a matter of fact. So, I had to do lots of different things.
Yeah, when you have a smaller budgeted, smaller film in general like this, you often do have to kind of take on different hats, like you said.
Yeah, and several of the producers were actually actors in the film. So at any given time, we would actually lose one of our crew members essentially to have to like be in front of the camera, you
Yeah,
know.
be the talent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So one thing that I read about the movie was that instead of taking lucrative distribution deals to get this out there, you opted instead to go the self-distribution route. How come?
Lots of reasons, as a matter of fact. Number one, when I was living and working in Los Angeles, I was privileged to be in a position to be able to see a lot of other independent films. Typically, they would come to us in trying to help find distribution deals. So we worked as what's called a producer's rep, and we would basically take these films as producers out to distributors or sales reps or whoever else we thought might be able to help get deals for the films. And what I saw was that typically the deals did not favor the filmmaker's best interests. The distributor might have a plan for what they're going to do with the film, and it might even land on like 10 or 20 different platforms. But ultimately, the filmmakers weren't making any money from it. So, distribution has changed a lot since the pandemic. And even before the pandemic, it was already swinging a little bit in a different direction. And so when we completed Birdies, we decided that we would, try some of the more traditional methods. And we reached out to a lot of distributors to kind of see what kind of offers they would present and what kind of deals we might be able to make with them. But ultimately, we were dissatisfied with the offers that came our way. And the decent ones that we did get only emboldened us more to think, we actually do have a great product here and we feel like we can handle this ourselves. So, as I said, several of the producers have been a part of this project for over 10 years. And so they felt like they really knew our target audience, our demographic, and how to reach them. And so we just decided to take the risk and just take it on ourselves. It created opportunities to have more decision making and more power in the process, of course, full ownership of the film, and then we got to benefit directly from any sales. And so that's what we decided to do, and we were really fortunate in that so far it's really paid off for us.
Awesome. The reason why that fascinates me particularly is because I relate to it. Because I just made a movie myself, so I was writer, editor, director, starred in it, and I went the self-distribution route as well, so it ended up on, Amazon, Tubi, and other streaming platforms. Right. So, we're neighbors. So, I respect the process. I love the process, and even because I think it shows a lot of character, because it shows how passionate a filmmaker in general is, and how motivated they are to get it out there. It's right. I feel like a lot of people don't really understand how inspiring that can be at times, because it kind of proves the point that if you are passionate enough, you can do anything, So good job on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. And just to further your point a little bit, what we found is that even if you do get it with a distributor, typically you're still kind of in charge of marketing the film yourself. Yeah. You still have to put in the time and the energy to get it out there, and even sometimes marketing dollars, either through social media ads or whatever, just to push the film. And then you still have someone that's, receiving most of the benefit that's not you, and that was just a hard pill for us to swallow. So we liked the fact that we could have full ownership and do it ourselves, and also, get all of the benefits that came with that. So
yeah. And
congrats to you on your film too. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Also, this movie took a month to shoot, from what I understand?
Yeah,
more or less.
Yeah, we shot in May of 2021, and we basically shot for the 4 full weeks in May, and then we had a couple pickups that we did like in September once we had kind of an assembly rough cut, and we knew we needed a few extra shots. So yeah, but basically the month of 1 month, yeah.
Sure. And what would you say was, I don't know, your biggest challenge to overcome while in that month of May?
Biggest challenge. You know what? I mean, day to day, it was always something different. That's kind of the fun of low budget filmmaking, is you always have these little creative challenges. But, we got really fortunate in that, like, we had great weather. So we shot, predominantly outside. We didn't have a lot of weather things. I would say probably it came down to scheduling, because when things would kind of shift or alter, especially because we did have this ensemble cast and several different actors that we had to pull, at different times. They had different schedules, and so we would have to coordinate with them to see when we could actually get them back on board. And certain times it was more difficult than others. But typically I find that we have bigger obstacles that we have to overcome. And for us, it was just not having much money. And so being
Hmm.
creative with how we either used the money or, did all of our art design or production and stuff, just trying to get creative and, to get it on screen where we could. So,
Awesome. And when you were filming throughout that month, was that part of like a really strict schedule you were trying to keep, or was it more lax in terms of scheduling?
no, we did have a pretty strict schedule, I will say, especially since I came on board as the first AD. I remember I was talking with the writer director Troy pretty early on about, what the film needed and how I could be a part. And he was like, I think we really need somebody to help schedule this thing. Again, with all the moving parts, we obviously took over this golf course in Wilmington for like the full month. So we wanted to make sure that we were kind of as efficient as possible. So we did have a pretty strict schedule, but literally from day one, it was disrupted. We had an actor flying in from Los Angeles who was supposed to get there the night before and then start shooting that very first day. And his plane didn't arrive until later that first day. So literally day one, we're already shifting the schedule and trying to figure out, okay, well, what can we shoot? Because we're all here except this one actor. And so that created some complications along the way that we were always trying to kind of fix. But for the most part, we had a pretty concrete schedule we tried to stick to.
Very cool. So yeah, let's talk about Troy for a second. So he wrote and directed it
Yes.
while you produced it. But I noticed that your next project that you're working on together, it's kind of switcheroo a little bit. So you wrote and directed your next movie, which is called Harbor, while
Yes.
he's producing.
Yes.
What can you tell me about Harbor?
Yeah. So Harbor is a psychological thriller. It's very contained, and it's basically about a woman who flees an abusive relationship, and then she goes to this like vacation rental home that her parents own, and she's seeking solace there when she is met by a strange man, and through their interactions, she kind of slowly unravels. So Harbor is a passion project of mine. So Troy is very much in the comedy vein. He's hilarious, and he definitely knows good comedy. And our social media account is really funny through Birdies because of what he's contributed there. And I'm more of a drama, kind of psychological thriller type guy. And I find that this team that we've put together really helps just kind of like we kind of form like Voltron to help each other out, So like
Yeah.
Troy is a great director, great writer. He's also a great director of photography, which he did for Harbor. He came out and shot the film for me. And so I just find that he's someone that's really easy to work with and bounce ideas off of. And, if I don't necessarily have all the answers or solutions, I know that he's a great source for that. And I think likewise, he thinks the same of me, just kind of having me at his side. Because there were times when the crew was two people, like me and Troy, because Troy would be there with the camera and shooting everything because he also DP'd Birdies, and I would be right next to him running sound, and
Yeah.
talking about the schedule and what's coming up next and trying to, corral the actors or whatever we had to do. So it's really kind of about just the team aspect of that
Yeah.
and our working relationship. And so we can just try on different hats for different projects. Troy's got another film that he wants to shoot, which I'm going to be coming on board to help him produce and probably first AD again. So, again, just filling in those gaps where we need help because we can't do it all alone. As much as we kind of try, we can't do it all alone. So,
No, of course not. But that movie does sound interesting. I do love a thriller, psychological thriller, especially. But I only really have one more question for you.
okay.
And it's more of a fun question. I usually like to end the interviews on more of a fun question, and that is, us normal people, us consumers, like to know what movies the movie makers like to watch. So what's your favorite movie?
Oh, man. That's a tough question. I have to always kind of fall back to The Godfather, honestly. It's just so epic and just brilliant. And I don't know. I love Francis Ford Coppola's work. I'm a huge fan of 70s movies in particular, and the greats like Coppola and Scorsese and Robert Altman and just all these filmmakers. So, I just kind of typically go right back to that film because I feel like it changed so much for filmmakers also, and like the types of stories that they were telling. It was very authentic and real and dark and just I don't know. I love that film. There's just so much in it. You could just watch it over and over again and take something new every time. So that's probably one of my. I mean, you're asking a filmmaker what his favorite film is. I can name
Yeah,
20, in any
yeah,
given
yeah,
any
yeah,
given minute.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, The Godfather, I just think is so classic. It's I'm gonna go with that this time around.
Perfect. Works for me. But yeah, that's the last of the questions that I have for you.
Okay,
I
awesome.
do want to thank you for joining me. It was a pleasure having you on. Birdies, we can see it where? We can see it Amazon. We can see it Tubi. Anywhere else?
Yeah, it's on iTunes. It's on Plex. It's on a few places. If you
Mm-hmm.
go to birdiesthemovie.com or follow us on social media at birdiesthemovie on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, wherever, you can find our content there. And then, yeah, Amazon and Tubi are probably the most accessible
Mm-hmm.
places to check out the
Sure.
film if you want to see it.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for joining me. Have a nice end of your afternoon, evening.
Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate you having me. It was a pleasure.